Hello, everybody. Good to be with you again. It's really wonderful to be here. It's been quite a while. I've been a very busy lad. Betsy and I just closed on a new house yesterday. If you want to see pictures of that, you can go to awakeningclaritynow.com and you can see some pictures and commentary. If you follow the relative side of this thing, not everybody follows the Fred and Betsy story, but I get enough mail to know that a lot of you do. So, um, what am I going to talking about? I'm talking about the sense of oscillation, the sense of free will, and the sense of a separate self. And the reason I'm going to talk about all three of those is that you can't actually talk about one without talking about all three, because it's the awakening is awakening to the clear seeing, the clear understanding. It's actually awakeness that wakes up and not the character. And it's awakeness that wakes up and realizes, hey, I'm awakeness. I thought I was this little man, and now I see I'm the vastness. And then if we're lucky, later on we'll come to see, well, I actually am the little man, but I'm also the vastness. That I'm not. It's not either or. It's both. But initial awakening is usually about the profound thing is seen is that I'm not. I'm not this character that I thought I was. I thought I'm not Fred Davis. Can't be, because there is no Fred Davis. That's awakening. So the post-awakening experience is, well, doggone it, I thought I'd lost Fred Davis, and now I see I am Fred Davis after all, because that's my experience. And I think it's Fred Davis having that experience. But it's not. It's awakeness that's having that experience. Fred Davis can't have an experience because there's no Fred Davis. That leaves only, see, in the absence of Fred Davis, well, all I can find is this, whatever it is. I can find it, but I can't name it. I can tell you that I am, but I can't tell you what I am. So, but the sense of oscillation is that sense that I woke up and now I've lost it. And it can come in quick flashes, back and forth, quick oscillation. It can be like it was for me, which is sometimes I would have quick flashes of awakeness. This is back prior to my awakening, and then in early post awakening. The experiences of those two things was not that different. Other than the fact that in post-awakening, I knew who I was. I was certain I knew who I was. I just couldn't remember who that was. So, I used to have quick flashes, but more often, I would be awake for, I would be awake for an hour, 20 minutes. 10 minutes. In other words, not just a second, but for a bit of an experience, to where I'd say, oh, yes, this is it. Or an hour, or even, maybe even the better part of a day. And it's like, oh, yes, this is it. Oh, God, I had forgotten that it was this. I forgot it was obvious. I forgot that, that I couldn't not see it. All these things that make no sense until you've had an awakening. So I would have that, and then I might have days, weeks, months of nothing, right? I had seen something I could not unsee. I knew that, as I say, I knew what I was. I just didn't know. I knew that I was awareness itself, but the sad thing is that the one who knew that was Fred, not awareness. That's what I call the bubble of self-reflection. I have a video on that called The Bubble of Self-Reflection, and I would highly recommend that you read that and watch that in conjunction with this one. There's a sense of oscillation, but let's understand that that's the character's experience, because it is the character that believes he's not awake, when there's only awakeness. Everybody's awake. Every neighbor I've got is wide awake. Everybody's exactly as awake as I am, because they are exactly what I am. We're all the same thing. We're all this awake space. It's actually a wake space that's talking to you right now through this Fred unit. It looks like you know, I know there's a Fred Davis YouTube channel and there's a Fred Davis website and Fred Davis podcast and all that, and it feels like you're tuning in to see what Fred Davis has to say or what Fred Davis has to report. But you're never, ever, ever going to find out because there's no Fred Davis. There's no possible way that you can tune in to Fred Davis. You are tuning into awakeness, which is coming through a Fred Davis unit and which will speak to you in varying degrees of clarity dependent upon how much present belief there is that, or understanding that I am awakeness and not Fred Davis. In other words, if there's going to be somebody identification here always. Because if there wasn't, you know, it'd be, well, I can't, you know, been drinking all day and I'm still thirsty. In other words, what's the problem? Because there's not enough identification to get the drink to my mouth. But there are varying degrees of that. There's going to be that basic, you know, just that physical connection. But there's also varying degrees of experience, and that's what oscillation is. Oscillation is it moves from that living orgasmic. If you get that, some people never get that. Some people get it periodically. I got it periodically, still do. Got it from time to time, which is fun. It doesn't mean much, but it was a lot of fun. I got it this morning in bed with the dogs. It was terrific. We all had a big blast because I don't think they can't feel it. So the sense of oscillation depends on a sense of a separate character, and the sense of the separate character is tied in very closely, as my friend Chris said in Satsang yesterday, and if I didn't know he was going to watch this video, I wouldn't give him credit. I just steal it to say I thought up with it, but I didn't. And he yesterday brought up very brilliantly that how the sense of free will is so closely tied into the sense of a separate self. There is free will. You don't have it. But there's free will within the dream. The dream character has free will, and we know that because I experience free will. So, like picking this up to show it to you, and because we experience free will, we think we have free will, or we see from a higher plane that there's no character here, and thus we confuse that into thinking I don't have free will. I don't have any free will at all, says Fred. See, awakeness never reports to me, Fred, I've got a sense of free will. Or it never reports to me that Fred, I'm having a sense of oscillation right now. I mean, actually, awakeness does report that to me because it can't not. There's nothing but awakeness. But, once again, conscious awakeness never reports that to me. There is there is a separate self. I know that this is crazy because you hear everything, including me. You'll hear me deny that as well. But what I'm saying is that your experience is of a separate self. Your experience is of free will. Your experience is that a separate character with free will is experiencing oscillation. And none of those things is true. None of them. But that's your experience. So guess what? It's as real as anything else. Is it fundamentally real? Well, why even discuss it? It's your experience. It doesn't make any difference if all of this is illusion, great. But let's notice that I'm on YouTube. And YouTube's an illusion, and this thing's a blah, 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 blah. Absolutely true. Absolutely true, but not relatively true. Because from a relative perspective, my experience is that there's somebody here and that he's on YouTube, that he made a decision to come to the computer and all that. That's my experience. It's not the truth. I can say all of this without being the slightest bit attached to those words. I can say, I'm awake. Great. Who's saying that? There's nobody here to say that. I can't be awake. There's no awake Fred Davis. There just isn't. There's no Fred Davis, period. So there can't be one who's awake or not awake. But my experience is of a Fred Davis, and so is yours. So why don't we deal with experience? Because the truth is beautiful. It's wonderful. There's just one thing, it's perfect, and even that one thing is an illusion, right? So you are no thing, and all of that, and it's great, and that's truth. And next, doggone, how about this dream? Isn't this something? This is my experience. For some reason, awakeness loves to have a dream, and then within that dream, it's trying to dream its way into escaping from the dream, right? So, and there's a dream that I need to escape from a dream. There's an escape. There's a dream that I could escape from a dream. But if I'm oneness, where would I go? How could I possibly escape this dream? There's nowhere for me to go. There's no escape, because there's nothing to escape from. There's only you. There's just you. No matter who's saying. So I can say there's just me. That's true. But Fred Davis is not saying that, because there is no Fred Davis. Awakeness is saying there's only me. And that's true. But that'll be true if it comes out of your mouth too. See, that mouth over there right now can say, I am awake, and it's going to be true. Doesn't mean you're going to be consciously awake. And we have to remember that this is that really, really critical difference, is that we have to see that there's only awakeness, but that there's two states, conscious awakeness and unconscious awakeness. And the experience of being awake and not knowing it is identical to the experience of not being awake. I say that over and over, but that's the secret to everything we're doing. And if you can get your mind around that, actually you'll never get your mind around that. What will happen is that you can use your mind to get around that, and then there's an intuitive leap that happens, and we call that awakening. But what I wanted to say is that not only is it the character's experience, but is oscillation, but it's an intellectual experience. What we say is that, Fred, I understand this intellectually, but what? I mean, what? As opposed to what? What? How do you normally understand things? Do you normally understand things in some magical, mystical way, or do you just normally know things intellectually? So the intellectualism, the intellect, that's what I really mean. It's not intellectualism, but the intellect, just the basic intellect. That's the foundation of the understanding. The final understanding is recognizing that there's no one there, no individual there to have an understanding. And awakeness is the one who gets the understanding. Awakeness is the one who comes to understand that there's only awakeness, right? So which comes out just as simple and it is that simple. It really is that simple. It's just that we don't believe it's that simple, because we got these big brains, which I found out they're not beneficial in this field. But we utilize these big brains to utilize intellect to figure this thing out. But we got to understand we'll never figure it out, but we understand that while we're trying to figure it out. What you got to notice is that you're powerless. Is that I tell you can't figure it out. You're trying to figure it out, but you can't. And you notice that you can't stop trying to figure it out. That's powerlessness. Is recognizing, gee, there's no possible way that I can win at this thing. There's no possible way I can figure this out. And I notice that there's no possible way that I can't quit trying. That's powerlessness. That's a total absence of free will. And we know that the free will thing is just all about, I'm this body, and by God, this body does or does not have free will, but I'm not this body. See? Descartes, I think, therefore I am. Oh, no. Pardon me. I am. Therefore I think. There's thinking here. Now, I, awakeness, don't think, but don't think this character doesn't think. It does. There's you can put it on a machine and watch it on a chart, on a graph. I have now a couple of students who are neuroscientists, and they can tell us all about it. Is that there's something in the brain? In other words, the brain is there's a signal that arises. There is action that occurs, and then there's another signal that comes in. But that original signal, we call it thinking. But where did that thought come from? It is the unit's thinking, but it's not actually initiating. See? Because it comes in right behind the action, and it says, I did that. It claims claims authorship. It claims ownership of that action. But it doesn't work that way. But it appears to work that way, and it's foolish for us to think, well, I can't think and I can't act, because your experience is that you can and will do both, and that you can't not do both as long as you think that there's someone there who can or cannot. What I notice is that I can't possibly do any of these things. I can't possibly be oscillating, which is a worldly experience. Oscillation is a worldly experience. The sense of separation, of a sense of a separate self, is a worldly experience. The sense of free will is a worldly experience. And I am not in the world. Neither are you. How do I know? There ain't no world. But I notice I'm sure experiencing one. You've got to get this paradox down. Because this is the basic paradox. Is that gee whiz? There's all. And I really like to point to David Godman wrote a biography of Papa G, the famous teacher particularly from the 90s and stuff, and he woke up a lot of people, and was a great guy. So. I never met him, sadly. But I have his biography on my bookshelf downstairs, and it's 3 volumes. I mean, David Godman was writing a biography, was writing books on Ramana Maharshi, and he hit Papa G, and he said, gee, I just got to stop what I'm doing for a minute and write a little book on this guy. And his little book turned into 3 volumes. And the 3 volumes of that biography of Papa G detail all of the experiences that the Papa G unit had while it was at least apparently planet side, right? It was planet side, we could say. There's no planet, but we could say that it's planet side. So it details all of the experiences. But the name of that biography really tells the tale. Godman is a genius. It's the best. It's the best pointing I've ever seen, because it's a 3-volume biography packed with all of this action and adventure and intrigue and mystery and mysticism. But the name of the biography, of the 3-volume biography, is that nothing ever happened. Boop. Best pointer you'll ever see. Here's all of the experiences that Papa G had. 3 big volumes in a boxed set. But nothing ever happened. Tell me Godman hadn't learned his lesson. Terrific writer, too. I would strongly recommend him. So, this sense, it always comes back to this, doesn't it? It always comes back to, I think I'm the body. That's the essence of oscillation. I think I'm this. Maybe we recognize that we're not the body, but we think we're the mind, but that's not true either. And the brain, notice that the brain is part of the body, and that's usually the mind we're thinking of. The other mind, you can't find it. There's no mind in the absence of thought. There's no such thing. So there is no mind which contains thought, because there's no mind prior to thought. Paradox, paradox, paradox. I feel like I'm feeding chickens, just going out here and throwing out pointers and just saying, well, here's one, and here's one, and here's one, and here's one. But of course, the truth is that pointers rarely work. Isn't that right? That was my experience. I knew every great pointer prior to waking up, and it didn't. Actually, I did not know one. There was one I recognized after I woke up, and it made perfect sense to me. But I knew lots of pointers prior to awakening, but they did not wake me up. Why? Because pointers, when they come in the way that they normally do, they come in the way of words. And this video was coming in the way of words. I want you to notice that I have other videos that are not about words nearly so much as they are about experience. Because this is the key. You cannot come to YouTube and learn about yourself. You cannot learn about, you can't spot. You can't learn about yourself. You can't get wise about yourself or whatever through language, because what you are is prior to language. And since it's prior to the language, all of this is chiefly hopeless. But the funny thing is that all of this stuff that is chiefly hopeless does set you up, sorry about the blur, so it does set you up gives you great context, and it leads you toward the water. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. Dorothy Parker, the great American writer, said, you can lead a horticulture, but you can't make her drink. Same idea, right? Is that we can come to, these pointers will get us to the trough. But we got to put our heads in the trough and drink the water, and that's experience, not learning. And what do we, and when we drink, what do we get? We get wisdom, not knowledge. Wisdom comes from what? Wisdom comes from the direct experience of your own true nature. And your true nature is not in the world. It's not a separate self. It's not a separate self, so it can't have free will or not have free will. There is this oscillation. I can remember how exasperating it used to be for me. So for those of you who have in it, you have my heart. You really do. I get it. Nobody gets it any better than I do, because I spent 3.5 years in oscillation before I went out and finally got myself a one-on-one living, breathing teacher. Which you don't got to get me, but go get one if you're having these problems. It wouldn't hurt you to get one if you're not, because it can help you avoid the problems in the future. Because this thing is tricky. Very few of us can wake up by ourselves, but I've got to tell you, virtually nobody can clear by themselves. I've never met anybody who can clear by themselves, including me. We all need help. We need those who've gone before. in order to keep us moving in the right direction, meaning that I'm moving into greater and greater clarity instead of moving into this sense of satisfaction that a character gets when it thinks it knows something, particularly when it thinks it knows all about enlightenment. That was this character's experience. So if it sounds like I've been going on and on and on about the same thing, that would probably be because I've been going on and on and on about the same thing. And the reason I've been going on and on and on about the same thing is that this thing is basic. There's nothing esoteric about this until you wake up. Right? I mean, it really isn't. And then, I mean, when I call something esoteric, I simply mean that it's context which gives you structure to understand the awakening. But that, too, is dream experience, which is great. We're here to enjoy the dream experience. We're here to experience the dream experience. The character may not be getting a kick out of it, but you can bet that awakeness is. No matter what, because awakeness has no preferences. Awakeness is perfectly happy with your miserable experience. I know it was perfectly happy with mine. And actually it reached a point where I became more or less happy with mine as well. I mean, I really gave up on the idea that I was going to get happiness through any set of circumstances, or that that I wasn't happiness already. Now I'm going to jump off into another topic, and I don't have time to do it. I would like to keep this thing to about a half an hour, and I see we're there. Come see me on awakeningclaritynow.com. Come, if you go now, this is 3/21/17. If you go now, you'll see pictures of Clarity House, which we bought yesterday, and if you are getting this sometime later, you can, if you want to just see I mean, it makes no difference. It's foolish, but I notice we do it anyway. So if you want to see where Betsy and I live and how we live, get some idea of that or whatever, Google Fred Davis Clarity House and you can get it, all right? Or go to Awakening Clarity and search there. And it's just fine if you don't, too. Matter of fact, I have no idea what you should do. I don't even know that you should wake up. That's the truth, you know? You should wake up if you do. But regardless of where you are right now, this oscillation thing, please don't resist it. Just let it go. I hear Jack out there barking. He's resistant at being in the backyard, and it's not changing his situation at all. 2 minutes ago, he was happy out there. Now his experience of being in the backyard is getting lousy. So he's barking. He's resisting. But his experience is not getting lousy, and therefore he's barking. It's just the resistance. There was a slight idea in his little head to change, his geographic location. And so the first bark was probably just alert, but when I didn't rush down the steps, the second bark became resistance. Now there's no Jack that's resisting, but there is conditioning down there that's resisting its present circumstances. That's all that's happening with you too, is that there's resistance to oscillation. Whose resistance is it? The characters. It's the character's experience of oscillation, and it's the character's resistance to oscillation. And the fastest way to make headway toward clearing that I know of is to accept your present experience exactly as it is, which includes this damn oscillation. Notice that it's not a curse. Oscillation is a high-quality problem. About to die here. Oscillation is a high-quality problem. Because if you are experiencing it, means you've already awoken. Great, you're now in post-awakening. It doesn't feel like post-awakening. It feels like used to be awakening and now not. But it's actually post-awakening. Your awakening is happening exactly as it should. It can't happen any other way, in the same way that you've now wasted half an hour here. You couldn't not. Look at it. And I probably have done so too, because, I mean, who cares what this says, right? But I noticed that we've done it, and it couldn't happen any other way. So you can, I'm glad to have you join me on what we might say, trudging our way to freedom. See you soon. Love you.